everybody. My name is Laura Kelley. I am the chair of the Miami-Dade Democratic Party, and I am here with Abel Delgado, president of the Miami-Dade Democratic Hispanic Caucus, and board member of the Miami-Dade Democratic Hispanic Caucus, Maria Corina Vegas. Thank you both for being here, and y'all have exciting news for us. Please tell us about the latest campaign from the Miami-Dade Democratic Hispanic Caucus.
Thank you, Laura. Well, the latest campaign from the caucus is meant to a call to action on our elected representatives, because the termination of the TPS protections for Venezuelans and the humanitarian parole protections for Venezuelans, Cubans, Nicaraguans, and Haitians have left the community in a total sense of fear. And we feel that our representatives have been supposed to be champions of our Hispanic communities and advocates for the immigrant communities, and they're fundamentally betraying the whole community by not fighting for our protections to be maintained, and for also then equivocating and trying to take credit when there's proper judicial action that protects us.
So tell us, what's the campaign?
Well, we have a billboard going up today.
Okay.
That already went up, that calls them out for the traitors that they are. They're traitors to our community, to immigrants, and to the American dream. And the call to action underneath there was to protect TPS, because a whole bunch of Venezuelans were set to have lost their TPS protection today would have been expelled, but for the intervention of the judge in California. And instead of demanding that the Trump administration withdraw its appeal, they are taking credit for merely complying with the law. Yeah. We find that insulting and two-faced, and we need to call it out for what it is. Yeah. Our community is suffering. Our community is in fear, and this is just the first shot. And we will continue to fight, and we welcome everyone who wants to join us to stand with us, because we know that criminalizing immigrants like they did with Venezuelans with TPS is something that can happen to anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I was totally shocked to see, I shouldn't have been shocked to see Maria Elvira Salazar take credit for the TPS being extended. That was, like, as you said, Maria Corina, it was extended because there was an order, an injunction, essentially, that did not allow the rescission to proceed. And because of that, just by operation of law, it was extended until October 2026. But this is not something that the administration should take credit for, and certainly not our Republican congressional representatives, because that extension, again, was based on a lawsuit that was filed by advocates, and there is still an appeal, as you mentioned, pending. So the Trump administration has continued to appeal this injunction, and so they want to continue to eliminate TPS for Venezuelans and Haitians.
The most egregious thing, though, is the basis on which this decision was made under the Aliens Enemies Act, which has not been used since the Second World War, because it's a wartime powers legislation. We are not at war, and it designates Venezuelans essentially as a security threat. Yeah. So this is actually a dangerous precedent were this to go forward, because it would allow the administration to designate any national group. And I'm sorry, I'm a little hoarse. I think I've had too many interviews.
Been talking a lot,
lately, since yesterday. A threat to national security, and that should concern us all.
Yeah, absolutely. This use of the Alien Enemies Act is so, like you said, egregious, and it's allowed the administration to allow is, I think, a strong word, because they've essentially violated court orders by sending Venezuelans to El Salvador, not just Venezuelans, as we've seen, people of other nationalities as well. And in fact, the Trump administration has been ordered to return one of the individuals who actually had withholding of removal. So he had actually had a protection from removal, and they supposedly mistakenly sent him to El Salvador. He is a Salvadorian, but again, they're taking not just Venezuelans. I don't understand what the basis for saying that we're at war with all of these nationalities, because again, in these flights included Venezuelans, Guatemalans, Salvadorians, and they've been ordered to return this gentleman back to the United States by midnight tonight. Exactly. And the Fourth Circuit actually did not change the lower court's ruling on this. I know that there's an emergency stay in the Supreme Court. Abel, so we're all attorneys here. Yes. Abel, tell me, what do you think the basis or the outcome is going to be before the Supreme Court? I don't know if you have any thoughts about it.
It's jarring because the law that is being quoted is tied to one of the most terrible Supreme Court cases in history, Korematsu, which is the Japanese internment during World War II. And I expected a lot of terrible things to happen to immigrants during the Trump administration. I could not have expected this. I don't think any of us here could have expected this, that we would be sending immigrants, asylum applicants, people who came here looking for freedom from Maduro's communist dictatorship, and sent them to a third country, to a prison camp. It's absurd that I think even the current Supreme Court will take issue with the Trump administration declaring war on Venezuelan asylum applicants and on Guatemalans and Salvadorians and people from across Latin America that came here pursuing the American dream.
And not only that, but the immigration attorneys that represent them in their order, executive order on March 22nd, they specifically, this was so interesting to me, they said that basically accused all immigration attorneys with a broad brush that we help our clients lie, coach our clients, and then submit frivolous asylum applications. This is so beyond the pale. The implication that we're violating our rules of professional conduct is terrible, and it's meant to create a chilling effect on immigration attorneys and really to prevent immigrants from having adequate representation, whether it's before the asylum office or before the immigration court. And so when they're attacking immigration attorneys, they're really attacking immigrants. It's part of that pursuit.
Exactly. And what's particularly galling about Congresswoman Salazar's statement of taking credit for this is that she took credit away from the very advocates that are being targeted themselves.
Exactly.
She is giving credit to the Trump administration that is still pursuing the appeal. It's this 1984 doublespeak of being against TPS while taking credit for it that it's beyond the pale. And I am proud to know many immigration advocates that despite the threats, despite the memo and the executive orders coming out targeting us, we know that our clients, the people in our community, are facing an even bigger threat. So we will not be silent. That's what this billboard is about. They might have turned their backs on us, but we're not going to stop saying our message, and we're not going to stop speaking up for the American dream.
Absolutely. So tell us more about the billboard. So we don't have an image of it right here on the live stream, but what does it look like?
Well, it has Marco Rubio, Congresswoman Salazar, Congressman Jimenez, and Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart in the background of red, because we know that MAGA Republicans and the Communist Party of Cuba and the Socialist Party of Venezuela love the color red. So we chose that, and it says that we call them traitors to Miami-Dade, to immigrants, and to the American dream. And this is really a call to action to tell members of our community that have different political leanings. We all used to agree on this one. We all used to agree that immigrants had a home in Miami-Dade County. We built the city and made it one of the most wonderful cities in the world. And now that so many of our neighbors and family members are being targeted, we're doing this call to action to say, hey, these representatives that are supposed to be our voice in Washington are turning their backs on us. So let them hear us.
They're not doing their job.
They're not doing their job. That's right. And where is the billboard going to be located, or where is it located?
It's on the Palmetto,
Northwest 74th Street.
74th Street, yeah.
Oh, right next to
Facing
my
south.
neighborhood.
So between Hialeah and Doral, yeah. So a lot of people who are impacted are going to be able to see it.
Excellent. And do you have any other billboards that are going up?
Well, we do not want to disclose that. We keep getting asked that question. All we are able to say right now is that this is just the beginning, and we will not stop, and we will continue to fight. Like this went up today in anticipation of the parole situation, but we have not the parole, sorry, the TPS, but we have the humanitarian parole, and let's not forget this also impacts the Haitian American community, which is an integral part of Miami-Dade County. And while we are, at a caucus representing the Miami-Dade Democratic Hispanics, we, also welcome our Haitian community that has been very active as well to step up and call their elected officials and ask them to basically stop the spin.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when we say that we stand for our immigrant community, I think we should understand that it's all immigrants in our community,
Right.
and not just one particular group, because it's affecting every single person in our community, who, essentially even people who are born in this country, because we have, mixed status families.
Right.
We have a lot of these people who are losing their parole were brought here by their family members.
Yeah.
People who
Exactly.
who are citizens or lawful permanent residents, and so it affects all of us, not just the immigrant community, not just the Hispanic community, but our entire county, and it's going to affect us not only just on a humanitarian level, but an economic level,
family separation level, and economic level. And what you said is so true. Our constituents, there are many voters that are represented by these representatives, and we have family members, friends, and close colleagues that are being directly impacted by this. This is tearing apart our communities, and people are in fear. People even with green cards, like that Cuban American who was taking out the trash only to be taken away by ICE. Like, are we living in the United States of America? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
This is, I came from Venezuela fleeing insecurity, fleeing, for my safety, for persecution, from a police state. What is this turning into, where all of a sudden can be picked up off the street without a right to defend themselves, without the respect for due process, shipped off to a foreign prison where there is no American jurisdiction, where there's documented humanitarian abuses, and essentially disappeared. And when the administration gets called out on that, they said, oops, this is not my problem. Talk to Bukele. Like that. I'm sorry, but that I don't think that passes the smell test, and every immigrant in Miami-Dade County knows it.
Imagine you send your husband out to take out the trash, and he can't come back into the house because ICE was taking out your house and sent him to a different state to eventually put him on a plane to a communist country. That's what we're dealing with. We're going to be dealing with nurses and even doctors that are here on TPS,
Right.
not be able to serve our elderly community and our children. We're going to be dealing with fields and homestead not being able to be harvested because we don't have the population that we depend on as a community, as a country. This is terrible for all of us.
For the hospitality industry, the construction industry. I mean, my dentist office, every time I go in there, have the assistants who were, dentists in Venezuela, but are now working to get their equivalents here, and they come in and say, what's happening with the uncertainty, and essentially the chaos is intentional. But the fact that these representatives, again, being Cuban American, being immigrants, having lived the same thing you and I have lived. Basically, bending the knee to the Trump administration is shameful. It's unacceptable, and we will hold them to it.
It's the what you said is due process, and this is
Yeah.
I think what gets spun in the media or in social media more than anything is the idea that somehow we support illegal immigration or
No.
that we don't support a secure border. What we support is the Constitution of this great nation. We've all sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution, and so has the DOJ attorneys as well. And so did the President Trump. And so it's absolutely shocking to see the foundation of our nation, literally the foundation, the Constitution that enshrines a separation of powers between the judiciary, legislative, and executive branches of government being
But I'm not shocked, Laura. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to break off with you, because somebody who basically had an insurrection, who refused to accept he had lost an election. He has been telling this is what he's going to do. And he has also been lying about it, because he said, no, it's only going to be the bad ones. It's only going to be the really bad criminals. So I, as a Venezuelan who have seen this movie before, I'm not surprised. What I am surprised is by the lack of spine of our elected representatives. And, I am so happy that people across the country are standing up and will continue to stand up, and immigrants and immigrant advocates and the people who can speak on behalf of immigrants like me, like Abel, like you, we're not going to go away. I have 2 daughters that are American born, that are here, that have been raised here. And, I didn't lose one country to lose another. So
Exactly.
we are here to fight.
The real problem long term that we see is actually not President Trump. Why we're calling out these 4 individuals is because there is no Trump deportation machine without people like them.
Yep.
There is no way he could pull this off without their complicity. And that's why they must speak up. They say they have his ear. They say that he listens to them. Well, then they should speak up and say, withdraw the appeal.
Right.
Stop telling the people who were here, who entered this country legally on parole, that they need to leave. This is absurd. And this shouldn't be complicated or political.
And and recognize that that agreement with El Salvador Secot prison is a horrific human rights situation.
Absolutely. I know we've had this conversation before, Laura, but as someone who practiced in a human trafficking court, it meets the legal definition of human trafficking. They are forcefully making people cross the border against their will, and there is a commercial transaction. People are paying to move them to a different country entirely where they do not want to be, and they have no reason to be there. That's human trafficking.
And it's a private prison where the president of El Salvador is getting a profit per prisoner.
right
And he's boasting about it.
$6 million contract, right?
Well, 6 million is what we know.
Right.
Because has anybody seen the contract?
Right.
Has it been made public? Is there a FOIA request that we can make to see it? I want to see that contract.
Right. And what's devastating is these people who were, and I'm not going to use the term remove because that is a term of art, people who were taken and trafficked out of our nation to El Salvador, that was not on the basis of having removal orders. As you mentioned, Abel, there were people who were in proceedings that are still in proceedings, actually. I know of people who are still in asylum proceedings before immigration court. What they've essentially created is an off-site, like you said, private prison in El Salvador while these people's cases are essentially ongoing, but there's no way of them appearing in court to even have their day in court to fight their case. And the other shocking aspect of it is that at SECOT, there is no right to a custody redetermination or a custody determination until after a year. So you're talking about people, most of whom have been convicted of, have no criminal
record
whatsoever, never been convicted of a crime, never even been charged with a crime, sitting in one of the world's most dangerous prisons.
where there's torture. Well, in anybody who comes from Latin America will not see this as removal. That's kind of like a light word. The way I read it is a disappearance, desaparecido, and that's what happens in dictatorships.
Exactly. This is something that
we need to say the word. We need to call it for what it is.
People from Cuba, from Venezuela, Nicaragua, Chile,
Argentina,
they know the story, and
they've seen it before.
I don't think anyone expected in this great country, in the United States of America, the bastion of freedom for across the world, that we would be using the word disappearance. But there's no more accurate word than that. These people are being disappeared.
And it has happened in Latin America in both right-wing and left-wing dictatorships. So this is resonating, with a community precisely because of that. Because the community that comes to the United States as an immigrant is because they want to live in a democracy where there's a respect for the rule of law. And this is a fundamental deviation, to make it an understatement, from that.
And this doesn't happen without Secretary Rubio, which is the most galling part of it.
Okay, yeah.
I had the opportunity to speak to him once over a decade ago, and he told me he was working on comprehensive immigration reform with Democrats. And now he's working with dictators and despots, making deals to deport people back to terrible situations and prisons and terrible dictatorships.
Well, he truly is the definition of little Marco now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he is more scared of Trump than he expects Venezuelans to be afraid of Maduro and Cubans to be afraid of Diaz-Canel. I really hope that our campaign, our message campaign, inspires him to have some spine and stand up and do his job as Secretary of State and stop this from happening.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so... We expected more, I think, from Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, as a senator.
From all
all of them.
Frankly, from all of them,
Yeah.
even, as Democrats, to be honest, just because they were, because they were from South Florida, because they understood the contributions the immigrants were, including them, they wouldn't be here but for, and having been immigrants, and Marco Rubio's grandfather, I believe, was subject to deportation, would be subject to deportation at this point because he was here undocumented. So, they know that this is wrong fundamentally. A lot of them are evangelical, which is really surprising. And so
I think
Why is that surprising?
no, it's really surprising that their faith, how they can justify
what's going on
and reconcile it with their faith, because this is fundamentally not something that anyone of faith would consider, in accordance with Scripture.
Right. I share my Catholic religion with a few of them, and I don't think my faith, the teachings of Jesus would allow me to not welcome the stranger. I was taught to love the stranger, love the immigrant, and that's exactly what I think they should be doing. But I think we should acknowledge that they didn't always used to be this way. We might have had our differences in other issues,
Right.
but these four individuals used to advocate for immigrant rights. Marco Rubio supported the Florida Dream Act when he was Speaker of the House. He barred anti-immigrant bills as Speaker of the House in Florida. Mario Diaz-Balart helped sponsor the Federal Dream Act.
Right.
Maria Corina Vegas, when she was a journalist herself, she spoke out in favor of immigrant rights. Carlos Jimenez refused to vote for Trump in 2016 because he was so anti-immigrant. And now something happened to these four where they turned their backs on us and turned in favor of Donald Trump. I don't understand why, but we can't let it stand.
Yeah, we can't, like you said, Maria Corina, allow them to bend the knee on our behalf when we have a community to protect. And again, this doesn't mean we say, no, everybody gets to stay. It's that everybody has their right to due process and their day in court. What is shocking is to see, and I've said this on multiple occasions, people who came here with parole, right? The humanitarian parole, CHNV parole.
Right.
They have legal status
Yeah.
in this country. They didn't come illegally. They came here legally on a plane and were vetted and fingerprinted, and they have work permits and social security cards,
Right.
and they're paying taxes. And this administration has basically just pulled the rug
Right.
out from under them, taken away their legal status, at the latest April 24th. But I'm getting clients who are actually getting letters. They say in termination of parole. Termination of parole. So early termination of parole. But I can tell you also, this administration is so disorganized and chaotic that I've received one for one of my clients whose parole actually expired in February, and she's already filed an asylum application prior to the expiration of her parole. She received a termination of parole. And I was like, so you're just sending this out to everybody?
But did you hear that they also sent it to the Ukrainians, and then they said, oh, no, we're sorry. We didn't mean you, the Ukrainians. So they had to take it back.
Because they were also part of the parole
They
program.
were part of the parole
It's not in the CNHG. It's not in the...
So my question to these 4 Cuban Americans, and I'm also Cuban American, is what would you do? You came here legally. You filed the proper paperwork. Your family brought you. You're on a humanitarian parole. You entered the country legally. You have a family, and you get a letter from the government saying you are no longer here legally. You need to leave. Are you telling me that they expect Cubans to get on a plane and go back to the communist regime? Is that what Marco Rubio wants?
Right.
Or Venezuelans going back to Venezuela?
Exactly.
And then the amazing part of this is that they're actually, so people who came on this parole, as you know, Cubans enjoy the Cuban Adjustment Act. So after 1 year and 1 day after entering with parole, they're eligible to file for residency. But the Trump administration has also frozen all of those applications. I actually have a Ukrainian client who entered through the border and was paroled in, and she, again, did not have an illegal entry. She has her case. She's married to a U.S. citizen, and their case is pending before USCIS. And it looks like that's another case that will be frozen. Any case, basically, of an adjustment of status or a change of status for people who entered over the last 4 years are having their applications to legalize their status here in the United States frozen for no reason.
To pardon the pun, illegal immigration was always their red herring.
Exactly.
They targeted illegal undocumented immigrants because they were an easy target for some people who vote based on that issue. Of course, we care about the undocumented immigrants in our community, and it's a shame that they were used in the way they were used in the last election. But they were never the only target. Legal immigration was the target because they don't want cities and communities to look like ours.
Well, and that's what you're absolutely correct. And this is what I told people on the campaign trail in 2024, and I reiterate it today, is that when they were saying about the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, that they were eating the dogs and the cats, again, these were TPS recipients, legal status here in the United States. And I wanted to tell my neighbors, because I live in Doral, I'm an immigration attorney, my clients, that when they said eating the dogs and cats, that was a dog whistle, but they meant everybody.
No,
they meant everybody.
Those were paroled Haitians that they were talking about. Those were people that had reinvigorated that community.
Right. And and the Nicaraguans, let's not forget, are now stateless because the paroled Nicaraguans, a lot of them, or at least a plane of at least 200, their nationality was taken away. Ortega emptied the prison of the protesters because he's an extremely repressive regime. And when they were paroled or sent to the U.S., he took away their citizenship. So now, where are they? What is their status? They don't have a country to go back to.
Yeah.
And they don't have any status. That is just appalling.
Yeah. And I want to just to bring this all home, the purpose of due process is not just because it's a foundation in our Constitution, but it's also what protects us from a police state.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly what you mentioned. And the poem, first they came for the immigrants, but I was not an immigrant. If we don't have the rule of law in this country, and the respect for the Constitution, separation of powers, and due process, what do we have?
Yeah.
What do we have?
Exactly.
So on that bright note, tell us how the public can learn more about the Miami-Dade Democratic Hispanic Caucus.
Sure. Well, please visit our website, Miami-Dade Dems. Oh, sorry, Miami-Dade Hispanic Dems.org. We're also on Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram. Excuse me. So please visit us on our socials. We have a lot of exciting events going on.
Yeah, join our events. Become a member.
And
if you don't want to become a member, you can just come to our event and meet us.
We are welcome to everyone.
Every Hispanic or a non-Hispanic,
Non-Hispanics as well.
every immigrant, and
every U.S. born.
Every member of the Miami-Dade community is welcome to our caucus and to our events. And we hope that they will come, and we will be, announcing more in the future.
Yes.
so that's the Miami-Hispanic-Dems.org. And then you can also visit, no, sorry, I have it wrong.
It's Miami-Dade Hispanic Dems.org.
Miami-Dade Hispanic-Dems.org. And you can also visit the Miami-Dade Democratic Party at Miami-Dade-Dems.org. Thank you all so much and have a really wonderful day. And remember, God bless America, God bless Miami-Dade, and God bless Florida. Thank you.